friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting Kill Team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode.
All right, because we're back with our friend William from the New England area, talking about Warp Covenant Inquisition agents. Since they did pretty well this weekend at the World Team Championship, didn't really make much of a showing at Nova, but I figured it'd be fun to catch up a little bit on these teams before we go into the new Learn to Master focus with some of the team players from the World Team Championship over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to talk about, both teams, especially Warp Coven 2 has been doing really well. And but I think Inquisition right now seems to be in a really good position with the new TAC op changes, the current meta that it sits in as well. So I think both teams are pretty strong, but I think Inquisition sits in a really good position for the future. And I'd love to talk about it here tonight.
Yeah, because if we're talking about future-proof teams, having access to everything certainly is good future-proofing, right?
Absolutely. So it's funny. I people know me as a player who's been playing basically elites for the entire year, and I call season as between. For me personally, my season is between the New York Open and the New York Open. So that's been I've just kind of pick a date and a large event and then kind of go through that. And so I've been playing Warp Coven consistently through that time. I played a little bit of Legion during that, a little bit of Ratlings here and there, but I've won a couple of large events, including on GT with Warp Coven this summer, and Warp Coven is still in a good spot post data slate, though I think they did take a significant hit. What I think is going to end up happening has been interesting to watch in my own experience, and then as other players are picking up Warp Coven as we come kind of the end of the season before classification changes in Worlds, is what people are doing with it and how they're kind of developing their teams. So I've heard some players playing some more Zangors, which has been really exciting to hear about, to try to get a little bit off of some of the Wizards and the pressure that they're kind of facing right now with their changes to their reroll mechanics and what they're getting out of that. But also I think the other thing is we're still in a place where Piercing 1 remains to be really strong. I think, as of the time of this recording, Death Watch has not hit the scene just yet, which is certainly going to affect that for sure. But I think as it stands right now, Warp Coven's still in a really pretty good spot. I think the challenge, though, with Warp Coven, and the reason I've kind of pushed into Inquisition, is that, one, the Kopesh change was big. Losing that one attack, I kind of laughed it off at first, but as I kind of was playing games and events, I realized that they were really struggling, and they really needed that fifth attack. The second point is losing Ceaseless was really hard on the Wizards, and so before you had really access to two Ceaseless abilities, essentially from the spell and then from the strat op as well. So between the two of them, you're in a really good spot to get some really consistent rerolls, and that allowed for your rubrics or your Zangors to kind of move a little bit more freely and be supported really well. That's kind of dropped off, and so you're kind of struggling to kill models, which sounds so strange, as Warp Coven has all these Piercing 1 weapons and all these abilities to double shoot and do this and do that, but there's really, they are kind of losing that out with losing some of that efficiency. So that's been a struggle to see that. And then another thing that's for me personally was in about beginning of August in New England, we started talking about classification. And so the three kind of biggest TOs, myself, Chris, who runs events in Connecticut, and Milton in Vermont, started to kind of talk consistently about what are we going to do about classification. And I was very opposed to classification. I still am very opposed to classification, but I think it's important as a community to work together about it. And so Chris and Milton were really excited about classification for different reasons. And so I think for us, as in a larger event sense, right now, we're going to run our GTs and larger events classified. And so with doing that, it means that for me as a player and not as a TO, I know Warp Covenant's going away. So it really put me in a spot to say, what am I going to go to next? And what was interesting as this conversation was happening and, the meta had shifted, classification was coming. I was certainly pretty frustrated. I think my community, my friends can attest to that. But so I went to a tournament and I just said, you know what are the two, meanest teams in the game besides Warp Coven? And at the time, I'm really thinking it's Higher Tech Circle and Inquisition. So I went to a tournament with Inquisition. I just brought them. I had played 2 practice games. I knew their rules very well. I've certainly played against them a number of times. I was like, well, let's give this a try. I ended up going 3-0 and winning the event. It had some really strong and competitive games. And after that, I realized Inquisition was in a really good spot post data slate. And then as I'm kind of future proofing and looking towards the new TAC op changes and classification changes, I think they're in an immensely good spot. My best friend Zach is playing Blades of Cain. I think they're the other team, right, that sits in that future-proof spot. But I think the difference between Blades of Cain and Inquisition is the flexibility from Inquisition is immense, as well as having some of the best rules in the game. So since then, I've been playing a couple more tournaments of that. I'm hoping to probably take them to the New York Open, hopefully do well down there with them and continue to have some success with them.
That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, Inquisition agents definitely very cool, just because they are very flexible, especially with the new change to attack ops and new maps and probably a whole bunch of other random stuff coming down the line. And the new board, have you spotted anything on Inquisition agents that makes you particularly excited on the new boards? I know that there hasn't been all that much play, but I'm sure you've been thinking about it because Inquisition agents, they have every tool except for a big scary elite.
That's it right now, but who knows? We know we have Tomb World coming. We have 6 teams coming. We don't know 2 of those teams, so who knows? Maybe there's something in there for Inquisition to get. I think this is just an interesting point. I'm curious what your thoughts here, Travis, are. Is that just ruling wise, right? One of the fun things about Inquisition is that as we move to classifications, one of their roster choices is going classified. So I think that the thought is that will continue to be a viable option potentially for them. Though I would say that Death Guard veteran, Death Corps, you will never take anyways. So you're probably not missing very much. But that's just kind of interesting piece there. I think board wise, I think the difference is it's funny as I look at results for major tournaments right now and through the summer is I think the question I always ask is what terrain are they playing? For us in New England, we famously play all 3 board types. So we're playing, we're either playing Volcus ITD. For the folks up in Vermont, they tend to play Octarius. For the folks kind of in southern New England, we tend to play Beta Decima. So, and we were playing the New England Beta Decima maps that, I've been on and talked about before, and it's been really great. And so, with that, the question is, can Inquisition play on all 3 board types? And they certainly can. So I think moving into Tomb World, as we look at some of the rules and kind of a little bit of the changes, some concerns I certainly have are the rooms are pretty big, and those can be a little bit of a challenge. The teleport mechanic seems kind of fun and weird, but we'll see how that goes. But I think other than that, they still have some really incredible tools to deal with terrain. So I'm not too concerned. I think the real question we'll be trying to figure out with Inquisition is what's the perfect auxiliary support you're going to take and those roster selection first. So it's, you can certainly look at the terrain component, but then you also want to look at kind of who you're playing against.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious when it comes to the support options. You rule out Death Corps. Are there any others that you rule out, or is pretty much everything else fair game?
Yeah, so that's I rule out 2 for sure. Death Corps they're just taken out. The first time I played Inquisition, this comes back to the 40K days in me. I brought every available model. So, I had every available model, so I brought them all with me. And I kind of laughed because in that event, I ended up playing Breachers for all 3 rounds. It just worked out that they were a good choice for that event. But I I don't think you're ever really taking the guard at all. The other one you're not taking is probably Scions. So Scions are a weird choice that they brought over from, KT21. I don't think you're ever probably going to take them. You're going to take Kashikans instead. The other one is Sisters of Silence are in this kind of odd spot. Sisters of Silence have three choices. There's a bolter, there's a flamer, and there's a power sword. I think there is something to be said about playing the power sword potentially into Warp Coven. But again, I think there's going to be better choices than that. But I think there is something there. I have yet to play into Warp Coven with Sisters of Silence, so I can't attest to it, but I think their abilities are very strong. But with Warp Coven going away, there really isn't that many psychic teams, right? There's a few random psychic models in here and there, but for the most part, it really doesn't.
Some may argue that the Magus from the Brood Brothers is one of the psychic pieces that everyone rolls their eyes at. So, having 5 power sword wielding maniacs that 2-shot an entire team, it was not the worst idea. I keep saying stuff like this, but no one ever does it. So maybe I'm the crazy one. I mean, they're not that bad. Their real downside is they don't have 11 wounds, but a 3-up save with 4 attacks on 3s, 4/6, lethal 5, ceaseless power swords. Not so bad, especially when you can chase people down if they try to move around you.
You can. I mean, it's not, I won't ever say don't take them. And they're in my box. So when I go to events, I always have Sisters of Silence and I always have 5 power swords. I would never build the flamers and bolters. There's no reason to have any of those. So, but I think really what it comes down to is you're looking at the big 3 options. So you're really looking at Imperial Breachers, you're looking at Exaction Squad, and you're looking at Kashikans. So like how those are going to be your big 3 that you're going to always kind of lean on, specifically for certain matchups and certain archetypes, but also board types too. I think there's a lot to be said about kind of the different ways to implement them. So recently, I played an event. We had a tournament this past weekend. I played Beta Decima. I was playing into Raveners. Raveners do not want to play on Beta Decima. It's unfortunately just one of those things. But he set up a good line for his tunnel. And I ended up playing Exaction Squad. And Exaction Squads, that you still get some of their rules. So utilizing Repress still was, still a nice thing. So you're hitting first with your shield, your 2 shield guys. And then your Exaction models themselves can still shoot into combat with each other. So it's a really weird implementation of that, but you can't be using that with your Inquisition models. You have to be really mindful of that. I think it's really important to explain that to your opponent. But I had a case where I had, I had a really good setup where I had -1 attack. I had Repress set up. I had Ceaseless. I was able to do a little chip damage on one of the Raveners, the Crusher one, and then be able to shoot a Weber into that combat and kill the Ravener. So you can set up some really cool plays like that. But I think the big thing with Inquisition is really be mindful of your reading the rules and explaining those rules to opponents, because I think that becomes the big challenge, is that a lot gets said and a lot of folks think you can do everything and you can't. So it's really key to explain
You can
that.
get pretty close to doing everything, but only in very specific situations. Like, yes, I can follow you after you move, but only if you move close to me. As long as some point in that move you move a little bit close. And yes, I can generally shoot you, but only if I'm within 4 inches. And yes, I can cancel a ploy, but only and on and on and on and on. Which is why you have the little auto savant sitting in the back typing up all the words you say, because as an Inquisitor, everyone knows you're very, very important.
You are, and I think the funniest thing about Inquisition as I'm playing them is that you have access to pretty much every rule. You have access to all these models, and you have access to all these abilities. So it's really kind of putting them all to bear. But what I think is the most interesting thing about Inquisition is their leader has one of the best rules, right? That +1 attack, -1 attack within that 2-inch bubble. But that model is terrible. He is the worst leader in the game. I think stat-wise, he has to be 8 wounds, 5-up save, a pretty derpy fist, and a pretty derpy gun. It is what it is. So it's, I always kind of laugh with my opponents. Like, he's applying a really good buff or debuff, but that's pretty much all they're doing, right? So like the heavy lifting has to come from the rest of your models. And I think that's the thing that you really start to figure out is, into specific matchups. So great example too. So you're playing into elites. I played into a really good Space Marine player the other day in our event, and we were playing on ITD. We were playing asymmetric squad games ITD map, and he had set up a really good play. He's feeling really good about it, and he had set this play up where he killed my Tomb Skull to kind of take away that debuff. He happened to be able to shut a door, and he was feeling really good. And he had a model still on guard, so like if there was a way for me to get into the room, he had a really good setup. I happened to turn a Kashyyykin who had 3 APL. He had moved dash. He had used Servo Skull to open the door, and then he shot a Ceaseless Meltagun with the Mystic buff and just absolutely erased this, Space Marine Intercessor or whatever. And then the following turn, this was like the second to last activation for me. I was able to win the next turning point. That model was able to get another comms buff, and I was able to use Denounce to lock down another model and then kill a second model. So those are some really crazy things that you can do with Inquisition. And that's some of the power that can come out of it.
Remember, friends don't let their friends go on guard in the middle of the room. Do it from the corner of the room so that people can't shoot you first.
He had like this, he was so well set up too. And it was really, he told me afterwards, he goes, I did not have in the, my prep, a Kashyyykin having essentially 4 APL in this moment, right? Like he had no plans for that to happen. And it was just like a perfect placement that he was able to open the door with the Servo Skull, shoot in, and then utilize Denounce on the following turn to kind of delay the next model and continue that rampage with his Meltagun.
Yeah, common power of a Meltagun, which is why everyone needs to go kill them first. Or just do what Jason does and aura farm by standing in the middle of a room and say, this one Meltagun won't kill me. Although, I don't know, maybe ceaseless Meltaguns are enough. Not in Jason's experience as a Phobos player who stops rerolls, but that wasn't the situation.
So, speaking of Phobos, Jason will enjoy this. So I had a Phobos matchup just the other day as well. And I'd love to talk about just one of my favorite agents, the Hexorcist. So the Hexorcist agent, within 6 inches of him, just turns off rerolls. You have to have visibility, but you turn off rerolls, which is really strong. It's very akin to the Phobos, was it Voxbreaker model?
Yep.
But I think the really fun one was in this case, the Hexorcist we were playing was able to get within 2 inches and be a valid target, and was able to turn off the anti-obscurity ability that it has on its data card. I forget what the name of the ability is called.
Multi-spectrum array?
scan?
Or the Auspex scan on the Voxbreaker. Yeah.
Yeah, it turned that ability off. And so it meant that I had all of these models that were essentially in smoke grenades that at this point couldn't be dealt with. And I was able to just kind of work through this and able to kill the other models and then come back to that model and end up killing them, which was really fun. I remember, I think the following turning point, I was able to turn off the anti-reroll as well, utilizing the same ability, which was also kind of this interesting thing where I'm utilizing Ceaseless into combat with this model that normally turns off rerolls, but with the Hexorcist, I was able to turn that off. So I think that's kind of, again, that power of the Inquisition is that you have just so many models. And as I kind of work with, my friends to kind of prep for large events, and it's just hard to read every model on the team. So I think that's another added benefit of Inquisition and their strength is that there's just so many models, both from their auxiliary supports and their own supports. To keep track of all those rules is really hard. And I think myself as a player, I try my best to explain those things. But that kind of can get lost mid-game sometimes. So if you're playing into Inquisition, make sure you ask lots of questions because they have 1,000 abilities.
I mean, that's an interesting point because I feel like whenever we've talked with Inquisition Agents players in this edition, the Hexorcist is generally one of those models that gets left out as a little weird to use. He's a 7-wound model, 5-up save, doesn't have a great gun, doesn't have a good melee, and is kind of fiddly to get around. He needs 6-inch invisible. So I think I get the sense a lot of people aren't using him. So it's interesting to hear that you picked him up against specifically Phobos that have all of these kind of like hero models who will one-shot you if they touch you. So hearing that you were able to find a way to use your activation count to mess with the defensive bubble on that Phobos player, pretty good.
Huge.
Yeah, I think that's been the thing that I've been really enjoying about Inquisition. I mean, going from Warp Coven, you were between. I always played between 6 and 8 models. I never played the full. I played one game with the full Zangors. I did the 10 Zangors, one wizard once, just as a meme. But consistently, I played kind of a 6 to 8, and I had a plan where my 6 would be more towards a Volcus and Elite matchup, where I'd play an 8 was more towards like an Eldar matchup or something like that, and kind of had a plan for each kind of way to play that through. What I've been finding with Warp Coven was activation order and kind of playing that out was key. So utilizing your Zangors, it was always a way to try to bait out activations, bait out bad plays, and then utilize that. With Inquisition, it's the same deal, but the difference is the Inquisition agents are so weak. So as you look at teams like Deathwatch are about to show up, players are really concerned about it. Well, an intercessor, intercessor with a chainsword shows up, you're dead anyways. There's no way you're going to get out of that combat alive. So it's really critical to look at it that way of saying, well, if they can get to me, I lose. So how can I set up some kind of defensive blocks to make it a little bit more challenging? And then how can I utilize some interesting in building? So like the Hexorcist, for instance, turning off rerolls, I'm finding is a huge bubble to success with utilizing the -1 attack. Hopefully having ceaseless on the right target. If I'm playing exaction, utilizing repress, all those things stacked with each other might mean that shield model might make it through a combat, which is really nice. And so if they are, it sets up the ability to shoot into that combat with a Weber or a grenade launcher or whatever. So I think, it's playing it that way. I think the other thing that I'm really liking too with the Hexorcist is that fear of that rule sometimes can just be so powerful. I played some really great games into recently a really good Jaeger player in our community, and I told him about that ability. And so we had a laugh. We realized the mines that Jaegers have is on their data card. So potentially he can turn off that minefield for one turn. So he ended up leaving that model so far back because he was so concerned that it would happen and it would just kind of end out the combat. So I think stuff like that can be really helpful as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I guess the global abilities that are attached to the data cards, you do have to kind of keep in the back line if the Hexorcist is just lurking about kind of at not quite the front line, but at the mid line that can go respawn. And then you can really use that out activation to push ahead for the next turn, right?
Yeah, so I've been playing, for me personally right now, I'm playing, because we're still in our current TAC Ops of season year 1. So I've really been playing mostly security because security is something that I've been playing consistently with Warp Coven. I had a lot of success with them. Had a lot of success with security with Legion. Jokingly, I've played a lot of Contain, and that has remained to be the case. But I've moved into a little bit of Take Ground as well, learning from some really good players here, especially on New England Beta Decima. If you have security, Take Ground is an immensely strong one on that right now. So utilizing some security has been really helpful of like being able to play a more passive game and allowing my opponent to push into me, utilizing some of my, hard-hitting weapon, like range attacks. I think, too, that's really important to talk about with Inquisition is the ability to deny cover at 4 inches rather than 2 inches. Critically, with that rule, you need to be mindful that it's not going to deny super conceal. But again, it's still really good. So, for instance, into that Jaeger matchup, I was able to deny super conceal because I was able to use absolute authority on it rather than utilizing that rule. So I think you got to be mindful of how you use that. I think too, the big thing with Inquisition is they have so many good ploys that having enough CP and using it effectively is really important. And I think I learned that a lot from Warp Coven. So with Warp Coven, their ploys are equally as good. You can't ever spend a CP for a reroll. It has to be for the most important reason of the game. So when it comes to Inquisition, it's the same way. Nice thing with Inquisition, though, they do have one agent that is able to, if it kills a model, it's able to generate some more. I always remember all their names. The Double Blades Enlightened is able to generate a CP, so it does give you a little bit of that. But again, he's 3/5, balance rending, maybe ceaseless. So like he's good, but he's not killing a Space Marine.
Really pulling him out to do the finishing blow, get that CP, or to threaten elves on some situations, but generally always good against a 7-wound model.
Yeah, he also has a really good ability to prevent fallbacks, which is akin to the same abilities that like Nemesis Claw and some of the Chain Snare abilities have, Mandrakes as well. I had a really cool game into was playing into Tempestus. I always call them Drop Scions. I'm so sorry. Aquilans. They're playing into Aquilans, and I was able to charge the servo turret in another model. And then I'm like, I'm going to live here and I'm going to get 2 CP. So it's going to take me 2 turns, but at least nobody's fallen back in this case. Yes, it only denies 1, not 2 models, but the servo turret is just kind of a bad model in the sense of falling back is very challenging. So,
yeah, I mean, the Enlightener agent can get multiple CP over the course of a game. He only has to be in control range. I don't get the sense that a ton of people use him just because there are better melee operatives as far as raw output. But if you can line it up, especially against elf teams or against the other human teams, it's great. Not that human teams at 7 wounds are really all the rage right now, considering we've got the Goremongers floating about, we've got the Raveners doing their work, and now Warp Covenant back in the meta. So what do you feel like the Inquisition's worst matchups are versus what their good matchups are in the current metagame? And I suppose since you live in the Northeast, how do you feel about Inquisition against Gellerpox?
Hey everybody, here doing our own little personal ad read for our respective tournaments. The New York Open, October 18-19, one of the last golden tickets before the actual World Championships of Warhammer. And Jason's got the Renegade Open.
Renegade Open hopping in right after that, which is going to be maybe the first golden ticket event for the 2026 season in just outside of Minneapolis, pretty close to the airport, November 22 and 23 with a golden ticket.
Yeah, tickets are up on sale now at ny-open.com.
And Renegade Open tickets are linked in the show notes as well. Hope to see you there.
Gellerpox. Orion playing Gellerpox coming out of left field on this has been fun to see.
Really a surprise to everyone on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's been really, I don't really know. I mean, I haven't seen Gellerpox for a year, so I was sitting there and reading the rules the other day for like the 3rd time in a row. I'm like, maybe someone's eventually going to play them. That I don't know. I mean, I think playing Orion will be, if I ever got the opportunity, it would be immensely challenging because he's really, really good. And I'm not sure necessarily the sequencing to it. And I think that's the thing with Inquisition is I've had some really good games with them because I think for me, I play a lot. So I'm really excited for myself. I'm hoping by the end of September to have 200 games since last September. So I'm at 189 right now, including my practice games and tournament games. So I'm playing a lot. And then as an organizer, I'm, watching a lot of games and, handling a lot of questions. So between the two of them, walking into Inquisitions felt pretty good. But I think as a new player into them, sequencing is really challenging. Knowing when you're going to use absolute authority is really challenging. So you need to know kind of every team. I think their best matchups are into elf teams and like classic Marine teams. So Legion and AOD. I think they play really good into most of the elf teams. I think Blades of Cain can be really challenging for them because I think, their Dire Avenger output with shooting is really strong. Being -1 to hit for a lot of operatives that are hitting on 4s can really be tough. And then adding in the Scorpion issue of, you're going to just take two mortal wounds on the cuff. And then as between a 7 and 8 wound operative, kind of fighting your way out of that's going to be really challenging. So I think Blades of Cain remain to be a challenge, but I think you have good matchups into the rest of the elf teams. Mainly when we're utilizing Exaction Squad particularly, or you're using Imperial Breachers on certain maps, not ITD as odd as that sounds. They can be really good. I think the other one is too, you look into like Legion or AOD, you push into Kashkins, a Meltagun Mystic buff, is really strong. You have Jenny 2 guns who can kind of with a Mystic buff and Ceaseless can drop drop a 18 wound heavy bolter. And I think that's going to be the case into Death Watch is that I say that, and then I'm going to find out the hard way. But I think they still have some play into Death Watch. There's some particular models that I'm certainly worried about. I think bad matchups, yeah, Blades of Cain for sure. Any team that can get free CP on strats that that are critical. And then the other one too is I think Hyrotech Circle is a really, really bad matchup for them. Crossing the midline and getting into melee or shooting is really hard. Their ability to utilize the Nanomine plus -1 attack on operatives is really challenging to deal with. And I think one of the problems with Inquisition is you end up as a horde team bunching up. So if you can get an immortal up the field and then be able to shoot through that immortal with a 2-inch blast that does stun and 3/3 damage at 5 attacks with Ceaseless, you're probably picking up a lot of Inquisition models. So yeah, I would say Hyrotech Circle for sure. Warp Coven, I don't know. I think Warp Coven's it's probably a 50-50. I think it's a good, the Flamer, and they have some really good pieces of tech, but I think being able to turn off Fate as my weapon for a turn is going to be really big, and a few other of their strats.
And no, you're not worried about a Canoptic Circle with their big 21 wound models, 3-up saves, with the medic sitting behind them, sitting inside a wall with Rosary and -1 attack and all the other craziness. No, that's all fine.
The reason I'm not even thinking about them is every time I look at their rules, I'm like, who's going to play these guys, right? They're so good. And in the hands of a very good player, they're going to be immensely strong. But it's one of those things like it's going to take time for people to figure it out. I think you still drop a 21 moon model. By the way, that's in a 50 mil base, so at least it's not moving as quickly with a Mystic buff Kashyyykin Meltagun. I think you're still
just teleports through walls.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, it's going to come through. It's going to have every cool rule.
It teleports through walls. It's got -1 on the attack sets of melee, so you're not fighting in a melee. It's got a Rosary effect if it needs to. But that's only if they do everything. How hard could it possibly be to do every single thing on positioning to make it all work?
And if they do, you've got all the wiggle room to play around them.
Right. And I think that's the other thing too is with both of those teams, right? Everyone's talking about the raw stat power of both Deathwatch and the new Necron team, and their stats are just really good. I think, I agree. I was listening to John Reese talk about it and doing a description of it, and he's like, these might be the two best teams ever in Kill Team, in Kill Team 24, period. And he might very well be right. But I think one of the things that I hope is a balancing component is that their tac ops aren't as good. So I think, again, that's a piece that Inquisition's going to have on the drop is that if, Infiltration finally gets a lot better or Seek and Destroy gets a lot better, they can easily push into those without much effort. Whereas with Blades of Cain, yes, they can, but they still have to be mindful of their roster and roster selection on doing that. So there's still a little bit of a limiting factor there. So I think, again, that really aids the Inquisition's ability to deal with that. Also, Absolute Authority allows you to, sequence things. I'm going to go to Death Watch as a good example. That, that damage reduction, right? They're going to do a big hard push TP2, TP3. If you can sequence that right to turn that off, I think you're going to do really, really well. I think about Raveners recently playing into that. Well, Raveners do really well when they're able to kind of burrow and come back out of that at a later point in the turn. Turning that off and then denouncing things locks those models in place. So I think utilizing those components as well as denounce. I don't think people recognize how incredibly strong that ability was. In the last edition, you could do it once per game. Yes, it goes up in CP cost, but still, you're going to use it TP2, TP3. You're not going to use it TP4. You don't have any CP to use it at that point. But, Phobos at least has to see the model. And yes, it's really good. The new Death Watch model, same thing, has to see it. Not being able to see it is immensely strong. And I learned that at the New York Open. I forget her name. She was an incredible Inquisition player. I played her round 5. She utilized Denounce on a Warp Coven model, and I've never not thought about that as I move forward into playing Inquisition.
Shout outs to local burgeoning sweat lord Evie.
Yeah, she had a perfect Denounce setup with I was playing Warp Coven, turned off my movement 7 wizard who had a Temporic, who had a flaming pistol and was set up for an immensely strong play. Just Denounce, you're done. And then the game was over at that point, right there and then. And I've seen that now as a player playing Inquisition, how unbelievably powerful it is. And I don't think players can truly prepare for it. So, yeah, people playing Nemesis Claw, Voxcream, they know how strong it is. But like Denounce, it's Voxcream potentially for 3 activations. So it's like, unless you've really set up, a multi-vectored attack, you're really going to be in a tough spot.
And you should always be setting up, multiple points of pain as an Inquisition Agents player, just because you have the ability to kind of set up a couple different movement traps. And then when you're playing against them, definitely don't launch one threat by itself. I guess, as Jason would say, time to threat saturate, because you're not going to get one dude to go do the job. So might as well get a bunch of them.
Yeah, if you drip feed against Inquisition, you just automatically lose. So you definitely need to just drown them in violence all at once. But I mean, yeah, like they do have a lot of tools, and they're a sick team. So I guess one question that I have for someone that has never played the team and just wants to dabble, if you could choose just one support option to recommend for a new player, which one would it be?
That's a great question. It would probably be Exaction. I think they add the most depth in options. And I think if you picked up an Inquisition box and you had the 7 models, I think it was in the basic Inquisition box, and then you bought just one box of Exaction Space Cops, I think you could build a really good team out of that. But the thing is like, I think when you're playing Inquisition Agents, you kind of want, you kind of want to get Kashikans, and you kind of going to want to get Imperial Breachers too. And the nice thing is then you just end up having essentially 4 teams. And so, been recently going to my local game night. We have a lot of like really new players, and I can just like play Imperial Breachers, or I can play Kashikans or Exaction Squad. So it does give you a little bit of that. But I will say some of the models, like Exaction particularly, you're going to play in a standard Exaction list, probably 4 to 5 shields. Your leader's going to probably have a shield, and then you're going to play probably 4 subductors. Most people are playing, and then you're going to fill the rest. Whereas in Inquisition, you can only take 2. So that means that if you are going to play that, you may need to buy 2 boxes if you're like really liking Exaction, but it's not a huge deal. I'm currently using one of my leader model as one of my shield models just because it looks nice. Imperial Breachers, though, I think are also really fun. They're quirky, and they really adds, something to be said about the Geist Skull and the Vox Screamer is still like the Vox Breaker. That combo is really funny in Inquisition. It's certainly a lot easier to play an Imperial Breacher and standard Imperial Breachers, but you can still play that combo to some extent in Inquisition. And there's nothing like charging a model 16 inches. So it's pretty cool.
Really ripping and zipping. 16 inches. How do they move 16? I haven't even looked at the Geist Skull.
Yeah, so the Geist Skull is base movement 8. It has a boost AP mechanic that gives it 6-inch movement, and then it charges. It doesn't have a melee profile. Its whole mechanic is that it has 2 abilities that are off the Vox Breaker. Oh gosh, when you have 90 models to remember all their names, it's like the most painful thing in the world. So if everyone who's listening to this, you're like, Will, you're getting all the names wrong. Yeah, you're right. There's like 90 of these guys. I can't remember all of their names exactly right.
Yeah, the only note about Breachers as an ad with the Geist Skull or the little cat drone is that the Breachers traditionally rely on their core mechanic to do the pair of activations to go get all the work done. So you're really only going to get the Geist Skull in this situation if you're like out activating an opponent that isn't going to counteract you. So definitely don't waste your time against Marine because they will
Yes.
absolutely
Yeah, and Battle Clade.
skull.
And yes, don't do it into Battle Clade. It's the same deal. So like I had a matchup, Jesse here in New England, just awesome player, awesome guy. And he was playing Battle Clade, and I'm like trying to sequence when he's network counteracted so that I could potentially use the Geist Skull. So when you're using it, the thing is that the Geist Skull will boost charge. It's going to charge 16 inches, so it really moves fast. If the model is not on, cannot for whatever reason counteract and deal with it, you go with the Void Jammer. The Void Jammer detonates it. Before he detonates it, he can do the Interfalse Pulse too, which is nice. So you can potentially -1 APL a couple models. I played into Goremongers with this as a great one where I was able to charge 2 Goremongers and then blow up. So when the Geist Skull blows up, it's within control range, just like a bomb squig. And so when it blows up, it is 4 attacks. It's on 3s, 3/4, lethal 4 up, which is critical. Blast 1 inch out. Things you can do with it that are really fun is you can ceaseless, so you can use Quarry, which is nice. Getting Quarry there can be really challenging. So like you can use Inquisitional Rosette to move the Quarry target if you feel like you're going to utilize this like a TP1, TP2. You also, it is a shooting attack, so the components of the Mystic could be there as well. So it is a really cool. It's a really cool gotcha piece, but then the problem with the Imperial Breachers is afterwards is they don't really have great operatives after that. So the Cat is also someone you take because you want a comms ability, and the Cat has a really good spot ability. It's probably the best that Inquisition can take, but the Cat is pretty terrible, and moving that thing is awful because it can't climb or do anything like that. You can like boost comms through it or whatever. It has super conceal, but it's kind of lame there. But the nice thing is they're half. You have to take, if you want to take the Geist Skull, you have to take the Void Jammer, and vice versa for the Cat. You have to take the comms, but at least the Geist Skull and the Cat are both count as a half take. So if you take both of them, it only counts as one of your 5 spots, which is nice. So.
It's another way to get 6 different activations on the team, just like with Deathcore, although 2 of those activations are just kind of noodly support pieces for the rest of your squad.
Yeah, and you end up actually getting you end up having 13 operatives, but you actually are
but only 10 on the kill up because you've got your
10 on the kill up,
your Cat, and your Geist Skull.
Yeah, so you don't really care that the Geist Skull goes. The Cat does whatever. It's one of those where, some of the Imperial Breacher agents aren't terrible. The Endurant is probably one of the best models as well you can take with the Imperial Breachers. They're great in regular Imperial Breachers, but having that ability to, utilize the shield wall, especially into things like Blades of Cain and things like that, can be really effective. You have a relentless shotgun. The problem I find with the Imperial Breachers is that their shotguns are 3/3. So again, going back to Exaction and why I think they're the best pick overall is they're 4/4 shotguns. They have access to some good P1 weapons. They have access to a really good sniper. You can still take the dog if you really wanted to. I don't. People keep telling me to try it, but I don't think it's got the legs to stand. But it is an option in there if you wanted to give it a try.
I think if you're taking a little bit more of a shooting centric Inquisition agents chunk, maybe the dog could have a couple more uses, but it sounds like you take a little bit more of the close up Inquisition agent skew because you're taking the Hexorcist, which wants to be within 6. You're taking the Enlightener agent, which is one of your mid range melee pieces. So then the dog presents less of a useful threat, and you have the shield. So you're like, well, I'm not going to be I'm going to be shooting with other stuff, so the dog is not going to get as much use.
Yeah, so my core is obviously it's the leader in the skull. I always take the Pistolier because Jenny Two Guns is just one of the best shooting operatives you can take. You're always going to take a Mystic. The Mystic buff, both the defensive and the changing a miss to a hit and a hit to a crit either out of rerolls from shooting attacks or from melee or shooting themselves is just immensely strong. So you're always going to take that. It then becomes kind of the question of like what you take next. You're probably going to take the Enlightened agent because it can generate you some CP. So just figuring out exactly how you want to apply that and where that works best. I tend to always take a gun servitor. Depends on the matchup. Depends which one I'm going to take. But, I find that more times than not that the gun servitor doesn't really do very much, but it really scares my opponent. So they have to play super conservatively, and it kind of protects lanes that way. And then if they don't do those things, then it, can do a lot of work. So I take those, and then kind of my last picks ends up being kind of a wash. So the Hexorcist sometimes gets put into there. I think the Death World Veteran is very good. He fights on Conceal. He's essentially an orc. And then you can always take the Quest Keeper. So the Quest Keeper, I wish it still hit on 3s, but it doesn't. 4/5, 5/6 brutal. You have Zealot, so you're like reducing some damage on a 5-up. It's probably rarely going to kind of kick in. But the big thing is if you have a dice at the end and you're killed, you can still strike on death. It's nice, but I think a lot of teams right now, especially in the Eldar meta, make that model a lot harder to use. So that's where I end up going with kind of a more, Enlightened and, something like that. And then I kind of play more towards that defensive game with Exaction.
Yeah, the consistency of the Eviscerator, 4-on-4s, 5/6 brutal with the ability to strike on death is not so bad against most of the elves, but if the elves are just one-shotting you or two-shotting you, you might trade with one elf, which is not the worst, but you could also play against Blades of Cain, roll some attacks, they can tempt you, and then suddenly you're just stuck there, and they do have lethal 5, they take away your final attack, and then you're just stuck.
Yeah,
and I suppose in the New England area or in the Northeast, you do have at least one Blades of Cain player floating around out there.
We actually have, honestly, we have 3 right now, which has been wild. If you look at the top standings in ITC, 3 of, I think, the top 8 or top 5 are all from New England, which is I think it's top 8, which is nuts. So we have Zach DeAndre Ward, who's helped me write we worked together to write the Beta Decima train map, but he's been playing Blades of Cain pretty aggressively for the last 2 months with kind of that same mentality that I'm playing Inquisition, where he's trying to prep for that TAC op change, and he's been doing very, very well with them. We have another player in Connecticut, Callum. He's been consistently playing them for, I think, about 3 to 4 months. He is very good. He's a really solid player, and he's just been grinding tournaments, and he's been doing really, really well with them. And then finally, we have Milton. So Milton up there, Milton makes some awesome Blades of Cain content videos. So if you're ever curious about talking about Blades of Cain, that's the guy to reach out to.
We've had him on.
He's mained it for like, gosh, probably 18 months at this point. He's made like 1 million videos. Milton he's just like the nicest guy ever, and he's really good with them. So I think between the 3 of them, we have some really strong Blades of Cain players that I'm either playing in weekly tournaments with or weekly practice games with. So you have to stay on your toes on that. And I think Blades of Cain is really good right now. I hate to say it because I don't want to, but I think they are probably one of the top 5 teams right now in the game.
Yeah, the elf meta has arrived because all the elites were hit just enough to make them all relevant again.
They really were. I mean, I think when the balanced data slate happened, I kind of shrugged it off for Warp Coven because I didn't think too much of it, but it really was a big change for them. Same thing for Death Guard. One of our really good Death Guard players, Josh, in our local up here in from New Hampshire, he kind of shrugged it off, and now he's playing Necron. So he's in the same boat. And then we've had some really good Legion and AOD players. Eli, who's I think number 1 or number 2 in the U.S. or North America for AOD, he's still playing them, and God bless him for it. He's trying to play them out until the end of the year. But, getting that blood out of that stone has become even harder and harder. And I think Legion, nobody's playing Legion anymore. Yes, they're still Marines. Yes, they still have some good abilities. But I think they took so many big hits where I'm starting to see some really good players. Thomas, player up here who's just started playing, has been doing really, really well. He was a big Legion player, and I think he's moving over to Goremongers. So, I mean, I think the folks are making the switch. And then all the Eldar teams kind of bubbled up, which has been fun to see. You know, Mandrakes are doing really well right now. They have some really great abilities, but Inquisition has, potentially four operatives that just ignore, some of their minus effects, which is really solid. So,
Yeah. Anything else in the New England area that you want to talk about in the near future? I know you're coming down for the New York Open, and maybe some of the other New England people are as well, but obviously you partnered up with the Wicked Dicey group to run some of the other, I think, Northeast regional events would probably be the best way to describe it. They run big retreats for Age of Sigmar and 40K, and it sounds like they're folding in Kill Team in the near future with successes in Jersey and also your event earlier this year. So do you want to give us a little spiel about what's been happening in the New England region?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the big GTs first, and then I'll kind of talk about what the local scenes have looked like and some ways you folks can come up and access some of those. So on the GT side, we have two large events by the end of the year here. We have Everwinter, which is December 6th and 7th. You can buy tickets through Wicked Dicey. That is currently a 24-player event, but there's potential we may move that up to 30, 36. We did get a golden ticket from it last year. It was a big fun. It ended up actually, oddly enough, I think was the first golden ticket event, period, of the season. We just happened to make that cutoff right when Worlds had ended, and I remember getting the ticket and was really excited for all of us. And it was big fun. So we'll do that. It will be, I'll tell everyone up front, we do play all three terrain types. We'll end up playing all four terrain types. We'll have Tomb World there. We'll hopefully have probably 25% spread of Volcus, ITD, Tomb World, and then New England Beta Decima. So that'll be coming at the end of the year. Another event that I'll tell everybody about, because I hope they bring it back to their locals. And unfortunately, unless you're from New England, you will not be able to come to this event. But we hope that other people take this idea. So New England has been talking amongst the big TOs and community leaders about trying to figure out what state has the best meta. It's been this big talk for probably 2 years. And so I said, you know what, let's run a teams tournament and find out. So we're running a New England Kill Team. It's I want to get the title totally right here because it's an awesome title. New England Kill Team State Team Championship. And so we're doing that. We have 8 spots open for that. They're 3-person teams. Essentially, folks from New England they're going to formulate teams based on their state or their connection to their metas. We're going to come down. We're going to hopefully get a TO from outside of New England to come run the event. I'm the event organizer, so getting terrain ready. We have a 2-day event. We got a hotel for it. We got a room block. It's going to be a really fun event. I'm hopeful that I can share this format with others because I know team tournaments are something that's kind of become hopefully more new. I know, Travis, you're getting back from World Team Championships, recently. So I'm hopeful that I can share a little bit about how we've done this process so that I'd love to hear that the North Carolina State Championship happens or the Los Angeles State, whatever. So if people wanted to use this idea, I hear the Florida meta is pretty big, so they can figure out which local down there is the best local. So maybe sharing this idea. So those are our 2 biggest events this year. Next year, we're hopefully going to have 4 GTs next year on the docket. So I know Vermont will run a GT in the middle of the summer. They usually run it in June. They are trying to run a second GT as well and I want to say in the late winter, early spring. So if you're interested in coming to a really beautiful place, Burlington, Vermont cannot be beat. We'll run Iron Weld, which we ran this year through Wicked Dicey. That'll be running in July. And then finally, I will help to run the Warhammer Retreat, Kill Team Retreat. So Wicked Dicey, you can go on their website as well. Wicked Dicey rents out, it's really cool. It's I've played it for 40K, but not for Kill Team yet. So they rent out essentially the summer camp. that they use for like ecology trips and things like that. So it's more reminiscent to a community college than a summer camp. You go in, you pay, I think it's $300 tickets. All food is included for the weekend. You play a 5-round GT. We'll apply for a golden ticket, and it's big fun. It's big fun. You go with your friends. You're out in the woods, but you have really nice accommodations, great food. Play a little GT, have a good time, and you don't have to worry about any of your accommodations or food for the weekend, and then you head back. So if you're interested in that, that's also an option through Wicked Dicey. So there's a lot going on here for big events. And then if you're looking for local events, we're really excited. New England Kill Team just about 3 weeks back at this point, every state in New England is now running at least bi-monthly tournaments. So Rhode Island ran their first a couple weeks back, which was awesome. Jax did a really good job. I was unable to go, but I've heard it was an incredible event. They ended up with 18 players. Connecticut at a Battle Standard runs consistent tournaments, and you can find them on Best Coast Pairing. Chris runs those events. If you ever come up to Maine, you can see me. We run at Phyrexian, and then Massachusetts is starting to kind of come back, and New Hampshire with more tournaments in a few other locations. So, we went from 40 players in a year to I think we're at to 270 players. I think the last time I said it was 220. We've gone up that many since May. So we're just doing really well, and immensely grateful for Jesse, for Chris and Milton, and for Zach and Eli for all their work and helping run our community and keep it growing.
All right. And for anyone in the New England area who wants to get in on the secrets for the team format, we'll be doing a Learn to Master series focused on the way the team's format has interacted with people's experiences over the next couple weeks. I don't know how long we'll be going for, but it's time to get some other countries up in here. So looking forward to that.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful teams takes off. I mean, I know I ran ACO this year, and there was certainly some things that we could grow on that as a larger community for the team's format. But I think there's a lot to be said about it. And I think WTC has been around forever, 40K, Kill Team, AOS, and all of them. And, learning from them is going to be immensely helpful. Learning from Travis, I can't wait to hear all about it. But, I mean, teams is fun. And I think the thing is, I hope to see teams at a more casual format is that as time goes on, we can, sometimes we earn golden tickets, sometimes we earn cool trophies and some prizes and stuff. But the thing about teams that's different is, in the end of the day, you've worked with a group of people to be successful. And it might be friends, family, or whoever. You've worked really hard together, which is really cool. And I think that's the thing that I always loved doing teams in 40K was I got to hang out and do prep with some of the best people in the world that were just amazing players and amazing people. So I'm hopeful that my main team is going to throw the smackdown for the rest of the people in New England. But I know there's going to be some smoke from some other folks. So I'm excited to play in that, and I'm excited to have that opportunity. And I hope teams takes off here in Kill Team as the years go on. I really, really do.
I've still never played in a team event. Maybe I will be someday.
You got it, man. Like I played a teams event. My first Kill Team tournament was with like two people I've never met before. It was wild. Everyone keeps talking about doubles, and I think doubles is cool, but doubles is its own kind of weird monster in its own right. And I think there's so much issues with balance in doubles, whereas like it's so fun to find a team of 3, 5, 7, however the format is, and then you got to do the prep. Like that's the other thing. I think the thing that I found, earlier in the year running a teams event, there were a couple of those teams that really did a ton of prep into that event. They were, really thinking about New England Beta Decima because that was new to them. They were thinking about what teams to bring. So I think, you can't just show up to a teams event with the 3 best teams and just send it. You have to bring, sure, to a point. Like you want to bring A and S tier teams for sure, but like thinking about the matchup pieces there. If I was to play in a teams tournament right now, I'd bring Wormblade. I really would. I think they're one of those really odd teams that can do really well, and they're a good counterpiece. So I think it's like the thing about teams is that people need to think about it like that. My format for my event is going to be only one Imperium team, one Chaos team, one Xenos team, and then I took an extra step and I said one Eldari team. So yeah, you could break up Xenos, you could keep it one, but I want to give Eldar players something there. So if someone wanted to play poor Jaegers, they could. So I think there's a lot to be said, and I'm excited to see other TOs create more foundation for it, because I think I know Dakota runs some big events on the West Coast. Travis, I hope one day you run an event for some teams formats. I know you ran WTC, but it's like kind of a little different format. I just want to learn from you guys. I think together we can make a really, really good system that everyone can use.
I think ultimately Kill Team is still growing, and we're not quite at the overall population base for us to get to these larger teams. Like, it did seem like as well as WTC was run, it was a little bit of a struggle for, any other larger teams to crop up, just because, I heard some stories about some other regions where it's 1 or 2 serious players and 3 guys who played 40K who happen to have kill teams. So it's not the craziest thing. There's just not that many kill team players yet. So I think it's been a very good push from the WTC to kind of popularize their version of the format. But 5-man teams, definitely not the easiest thing. But hopefully next year we'll have an American team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, also, it was a little bit of tough timing for the Americans, right? Having Nova right there, that makes it a little difficult. But again, there's a lot of really good American players. I think making a team definitely can happen, and we've made really strong teams in the past. So, we should be going for it. There's no reason we can't let the rest of them take it. We can do this. We can get more gold medals. We're very good at this. We like that at the Olympics. We can take the same energy for Kill Team. No, again, I think the other thing though, that's WTC is the event that if I could go to any event in the world, that's the one I would go to. I think the ability to play with players around the world, immensely competitive and strong players, but also I think the prep that goes into it and the thought process that goes into it by each team is really cool. We had a really incredible player here in Maine who was an orc player who went to 3 WTCs, I think in 8th and 9th edition. And, he would come to tournaments with like random jerseys on from all over the world. Like he'd be like, where does this Polish jersey have showed up? And then he would share about it. And I think about it a lot. I think it's just the coolest thing. So it'd be, I think in the future, I hope the American team has a really good thing going, because we have some great players here. Some great players abroad too, don't get me wrong. But we have some good players here.
Alrighty. I think that's a good note to leave it on. We got a little bit of New England, we got a little bit of the Inquisition agents, and hopefully we'll get some team stuff in the near future.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's always been a pleasure. Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming on. And as always,